Welcome to the first episode of My Favorite Failure. I am Travis Bogue, and today I'm with Bob McCain, the owner of Buffalo Peak Outfitters and former boss of mine. Mr. Bob, thank you for joining me.
Absolutely. Thank you, Travis.
I guess just give us an overview of what you do here, who you serve, and what kind of products you carry.
Well, we basically carry outdoor clothing, equipment, and footwear. There are different definitions of outdoor, For a lot of people in Mississippi, that means hunting and fishing. But for a broader group of people, that also means hiking and camping and backpacking, fishing. There's a lot of different things. We've got a lot of resources here in Mississippi that will get you outdoors. So, we do everything from hiking boots to casual clothing, ski clothing during the winter. We could outfit someone for a through hike of the Appalachian Trail if they wanted to do that. Obviously, we sell a lot more of, I guess, kind of what I would call lifestyle clothing and footwear. And it's grown, it's changed, it's evolved over the years. We're in year number 35 this year.
Yeah, so you started in what, 1986?
1986, yeah.
35 years.
Yeah.
Wow.
I was 12 when we started, yeah.
I was born in 84.
Yeah.
So take me back there. Take me back to 1984, 1985. Is this concept in your head? Are you thinking this is what I want to do?
Well, when I graduated from college, I was working for a chain of the Athlete's Foot stores, which they're not around in this area anymore. But it was a locally owned operation, and we sold primarily athletic footwear and clothing, mostly footwear. This was in the running boom of the 80s, when Nike was really coming into its own. And I started out as just a hourly employee, part-time, and then I worked my way up, and when I left, I was operations manager over 5 stores and a warehouse, did all the buying for the whole operation. And so this exact concept was not really in my mind. I knew that I wanted to do something on my own. Yeah. I enjoyed retail. I felt like I had a good knack for retail, and I had a great teacher at that, which I think we'll probably talk about a little later. But this exact concept, was not in my mind. I mean, this was probably just as outdoor was really starting to come on strong as a category.
What went into pulling the trigger, saying, all right, let's go, this is what I want to do?
Well, it was I was sort of pushed out of the nest a little bit. The guy that I had worked for, a guy named Larry Glass, had decided that he wanted to sell his operation, 5 stores. There was a guy out of Atlanta who had bought a group of stores in Alabama, and I think that Larry just assumed that he would probably be interested in coming over and just moving through the territory and buying another group of stores. And so I sort of got pushed out of the nest a little bit there, and needed to do something on my own. I was up in North Carolina a few months before that, and went into a little shop in Highlands, North Carolina, called the Happy Hiker. And it was on Chestnut Street, old log cabin, just coolest little shop, mom and pop operation, David and Carol Wilkes. And I started thinking, okay, I need to do something on my own.
Yeah.
And I liked retail. I enjoyed retail. I knew retail, I thought, pretty well. And so I went back up there and talked to them and just picked their brain and said, how did you guys get started, and how do you do what you do? And they made me show them my driver's license to make sure that I wasn't opening a shop up down the road from them. But got some great information from them. Took a look around at what was here in Jackson, and there really wasn't a lot here that sold that type of product. And you have to remember, this was This was when LL Bean was really big,
Yep.
and outdoors was really starting to hit its stride. And so I took a look around town, and I said, well, how about this concept? Maybe this is something, something different, something unique. And so in 1986, October 18th, I opened.
You did it.
I did it.
So how did you come up with the name Buffalo Peak?
Oh, there's an interesting story behind this one.
Let's hear it.
So when I was in college, a bunch of buddies of mine and I used to go over to Lake Gunnersville State Park in North Alabama, a little north of Birmingham. And we would go between exams and finals, and it was just sort of a week of total irresponsibility.
You were going to Belhaven?
Yeah, I was at Belhaven. And so we would go over there and we would just, we would fish, we'd ski, we'd play tennis, we'd play basketball, we'd stay up all night playing cards, just a total goof-off week, and we loved it. And we, as a matter of fact, we still do that to this day. There's a group of about 6 of us that still have stuck together, and we're going over there in May this year. But there's this ginger ale in Alabama called Buffalo Rock, and it dates all the way back to the Civil War, and it's still produced by the Buffalo Rock Company in Birmingham. And they're a huge Pepsi bottler over there. And so that was, Mississippi mountaineering just didn't seem to fit. I wanted something outdoorsy sounding, and that obviously didn't really work. And so at some point in time, that crossed my mind, Buffalo Rock Outfitters. The buffalo was kind of the symbol of the West.
Yep.
It was, and I love the West. And so I thought that sounds good. But I kept going through other suggestions from friends and family, but I just sort of kept circling back around to that.
To Buffalo.
Yeah. And to Buffalo Rock Outfitters. So I was going through Birmingham and Atlanta and up to Charlotte to market, and I stopped back by in Birmingham and talked to Jimbo Lee the fourth generation president of the Buffalo Rock Company in Birmingham, and sat down in his office, shook his hand, explained to him what I was going to do. He got a big kick out of the fact that my buddies and I still drank Buffalo Rock ginger ale, which was a very, very small portion of their business, but he liked it was the oldest part of the business. He loved that. So we talked for a little while, told him what I was going to do, shook hands, got up, left, didn't think anything about it. He said, yeah, that's great. Love the idea. 6 months later, I get a cease and desist letter. And I'm sure someone in his legal department got wind of it, and they were like, what were you thinking? So I had a buddy of mine that was an attorney, and so I called him up and I said, hey, will you take a look at this? And he said, yeah, sure. And so he took a look at it. He contacted, my attorney contacted their attorney. And this went back and forth for probably a month or so. And he came back to me and he said, they're not backing down on this. They're serious.
So the gentleman's handshake didn't work.
Gentleman's handshake didn't work.
Yep.
Which, I was 28 years old when I started this thing. I didn't know anything about contracts or business agreements.
You had a cool business name, you thought.
I had a cool business name, and he liked it.
And you went and got permission from the guy that thought of it.
Absolutely.
And,
Yeah, I got, fourth generation guy. I said, yeah, that's great. That's cool. We like that. So my buddy said, look, I think that if we went to court, we could probably win this. But he said, I can't guarantee that. Yeah. Of course, the three scariest words, in the English language are trial by jury. So he said, if I were you, he said, I would just change the name. He said, I think that's the safest thing to do. And he said, and even if we do go to court and we do win, you're going to have to pay me a bunch of money to do that, and you've only been in business for 6 months.
Yep.
And so I said, yeah, you're probably right. And so I started kind of racking my brain about what we would do, and Buffalo Peak Outfitters came to mind.
Mm-hmm.
Mainly, even though peak is a much loftier term than rock, it fit the sign. I could take rock off and put peak on there, and both of them ended in a K, and it worked out great. So we communicated back with them, and they said, yeah, that's acceptable, that's fine, and they gave us, I don't know, 3 months to use up all our stationery or whatever, and so that's how we came to be Buffalo Peak Outfitters. The I guess kind of sad but comical part of it was nobody here really knew. They didn't notice. We'd only been in business for 6 months. I'd had some T-shirts and sweatshirts done when we first opened and given them out to some people that I knew, and a couple of those people brought them back, so I've still got a couple of the old Buffalo Rock
that's nice
logo, and it's exactly the same. We just ROCK came out, PEAK went in. There is a Buffalo Peak in Colorado, a mountain, and people have asked me, is that what? And I'm like,
no. This is from a ginger ale in North Alabama.
Yeah, it's a ginger ale, North Alabama, goes back, 40 years.
So is that really the closest from here in Jackson, Mississippi? Is that the closest you can get out, in somewhat mountains and, trails and outdoors?
Yeah, really. I mean, Sipsey Wilderness area up in North Alabama is a pretty popular area to go to from here. We're pretty vertically challenged in Mississippi, obviously. Woodall Mountain, I think, is, don't quote me on this, 850 feet above sea level, something like that. It's, we're pretty flat here. But North Alabama's, has got some mountains, for the South mountains. Arkansas obviously has got a lot when you get into the Ozarks up there. But, first backpacking trip I ever went on was in Sipsey Wilderness area.
That was always one of my favorite things when I worked for you, was getting to use the equipment.
Yeah.
Getting to go out and actually do some stuff. And you let me actually, that's, back before I was doing what I do, you let me kind of take control of the website. And I remember me and Lauren Roman and Aaron Robbins went out to one of my buddy's houses and just his parents got some land out there, and we went up and set up a camping site, and using the equipment and having the backpacks and all that and the boots. It was a fun time.
Yeah.
So let's back up a little bit. You have this idea for this business. How did you get funding to start it?
You'll probably laugh when I tell you how much money we started this business with, especially if you look around at 9,100 square feet here and 35 years in business. We started the business with $40,000.
Wow.
In 1986. I had $10,000 of profit sharing money from my prior job, and my father-in-law put up the same amount. And then we borrowed $20,000 from the bank. Now, that might seem like it was easy to do, but in 1986, there were two things that banks really didn't want to lend money to: restaurants and clothing stores. It was the two big failure businesses, I guess. We went to several banks, and no one really wanted to loan us some money. SBA just flat turned us down. And
said nope.
And said, we don't want to come take your house. I mean, they were very blunt about it. And we finally found a banker that would work with us, and so we took $40,000 and started the business. Now, then it was only 1,500 square feet.
Was it this location though?
It was this location, yeah. But 1,500 square feet, really small, not a lot of inventory. I mean, we're fortunate that we survived those first few years.
Speaking of those first few years, how did you attract, I remember you having such a loyal customer base. Same people come, there were always people in here, but you would notice the same ones and you would develop relationships with them.
Yeah.
How did you go about establishing, or maintaining that customer base? Did you do any research before you started this? Did you know, hey, there's a market for this out there? What went into attracting customers in the early days?
Well, having spent 6 years with the Athlete's Foot here, I knew that there was a customer base here that was active, that enjoyed doing things outside. So I didn't really do a lot of research in terms of what are the number of backpackers in town, or I didn't have any of that. All that data wasn't available back then, but I knew that there was an active population here in Jackson, in the Jackson area, and but I didn't do any market research or it was just sort of a gut feeling of,
I think I can do this.
yeah, I mean, I was, yeah, I had the confidence to I think to start the business, but we've evolved so much, so much since then. I mean,
Yeah.
we were really small then. We were tiny.
What'd you start out with? What were your main products?
We carried Rockport walking shoes. You don't even know what that is. That was the first walking shoe when people decided that walking was good exercise and they didn't have to run. Rockport shoes were the first, biomechanical correct shoes that gave you support, that gave you cushion. We started out with that. We started out with clothing brands that don't even exist anymore. JanSport way back in the day before they, or in addition to doing packs and everything, did clothing as well. We started out with Marmot, I think. We started out with a rugby shirt company out in New England called Rugged Wear. It was just sort of casual, outdoorsy lifestyle clothing.
Yeah.
And we had Danner hiking boots when we first started. You can you can tell from this I really had the concept and my focus dialed in back then. But I remember we put together our first little gear order, and I had a guy working for me named Chris Whitlock who pushed me to put the gear in, and I think I let him order $100 worth of gear the first shot, and he ordered like one backpacking stove and 3 flashlights and some waterproof matches or something like that. We started out really small. We sold a little bit of that. We added a little bit to that the next time, and the gear part of it started to grow. But we've evolved so much, over the years in terms of the brands that we've carried and the categories that we've carried.
And so has the technology of these things.
Oh, absolutely.
So it's, you're talking about the little walking shoe, the first little walking shoe that gives you the support and stuff. And then you got, your Brooks, your On Cloud, these shoes that just, totally transformed the comfort and the protection for the body itself.
Oh yeah. Yeah. There's no doubt. I mean, the technology that has, that's found its way into the outdoor industry or been created by the outdoor industry has changed drastically in the last 10 years. I mean, not even the last 35, in the last 10 years. Lighter weight materials, stronger materials, more durable materials. There was always this trade-off if you were backpacking of weight. And if, like in hiking boots, the old thought process was, well, the heavier the boot, the more support it's going to give you. And so the boots that we were selling back then were heavy, all leather, stitched down welt boots. That whole idea came from Europe, where they'd been doing this a lot longer than we had. And now you look at a Solomon boot, and it's lighter weight materials. They have found that the support can come from the bottom and the midsole package, and it doesn't have to be a heavy leather upper that takes 10 years just to get broken in. So the technology's changed. Waterproof, breathable fabrics, rain jackets, technology has changed tremendously over the years on that. And that's trickled down to a lot of different things. Sock technology is vastly different from the old rag wool socks that we used to wear back in the day when we first started. Fabric blends are really big now, taking the benefits of one fabric and adding another fabric to it and getting the best of both worlds, like a cotton and polyester blend. So you get the softness and the feel of cotton, but the quick dry, non-wrinkling properties of a polyester. So that technology has just exploded over the years, no doubt about it.
How have you marketed yourself and your business over the years? I remember us doing, Northside Sun. What are the different avenues you use to market your business?
Well, in 35 years, we've probably tried just about everything once. We've done radio, we've done TV, we've done print advertising in, the Clarion Ledger. You mentioned the Northside Sun. That's, it's always been good for us just because it's kind of right here in our backyard. Lately we've done more social media, as that trend has changed. And so we've kind of tried all of it. And different things work for a time, and then they're not as effective as something else. Obviously social media is a huge deal now, especially with the younger generation, and of course even my generation is all over Facebook. We've kind of taken over Facebook and left you guys to do Twitter or Instagram or whatever y'all are doing. So.
I'm an original Facebooker. I was at Ole Miss, and I came home and everybody had Facebook.
Yeah.
And I think I set up my account in 2004, and then now it's I do a lot of business on Facebook.
Yeah.
Run a lot of ads for people, and it's huge.
Well,
and they make it cheap. It's not that expensive if you can define your target audience, and just run an ad. I've got plenty of clients that just spend $150 a month targeted. It's getting in front of the people they need to get in front of, and they see a return off of it.
Right.
And it's and I heard there's people out there spending thousands, tens of thousands.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's a pretty good avenue for marketing.
It's very cost effective, and my philosophy has always been I can sell everybody in Jackson something once, but if they don't come back again, then I'm not going to be in business very long. And so to be able to target your customer base, you can go on Facebook, you can boost it. With Facebook, you've got followers, and we've got, I don't know what, we got 30,000 followers or something like that. I mean, that's
awesome.
That's 30,000 people that wanted to follow us.
Well, you have a really cool company and a really cool brand with really cool products. So you're almost, I don't want to say lucky because you chose to do all this stuff, but it's fun to put a shoe on a blank background or on the wooden floor or a shirt or, the stuff. And the way I see you marketing and your guys, showing your business off, it looks professional and it's a really cool new product.
Yeah.
That's clean and, doing a single shirt shot, it's really cool seeing how you go about showing your business to the world.
Yeah. And I have to, I don't take credit for any of that. I have to give my oldest son, Cody, credit for that because he was our marketing manager for most of the time that he was here. And so that's how he started shooting product. And then he left and went and got in the restaurant business and is at Elvy's now. And if you will notice Elvy's advertising, their food photography and the way they present their product is outstanding.
Let's give him a minute on Elvy's. What is Elvy's?
So Elvy's is Cody McCain, who's my oldest son, and Hunter Evans, who's a local guy who spent some time in New York and is a very, very talented chef. He was was at Lou's Full Serve for 2 or 3 years, I think, in the kitchen there. And so they put together this concept. Elvy was Hunter's grandmother who lived in New Orleans, and he remembers going down there for family vacations, long weekends, and just, always having something cooking in the kitchen, in a New Orleans kitchen.
Yep.
And so that's the inspiration for it. People ask me, what is it like? And to me, it's very unique in the Jackson marketplace. And the best way that I can describe it is that it's a combination of New Orleans Creole meets the South. And so it's all local, fresh ingredients. They get their oysters from the coast, all their meats comes from Home Place Pastures up in Como. All their vegetables and everything comes from Two Dog Farms up in Flora. Everything is locally sourced. Everything is fresh. And it's just this sort of Creole, New Orleans, Southern comfort food, sort of a mix.
Have they been able to open back up?
Yeah. I felt bad for them last year because they opened, I think, the first week of February.
Yeah.
And they were killing it. They were doing great. And they were open, I think, for 5 weeks and then got shut down.
Yeah.
Took a couple of 3 weeks off, put their heads together, started doing some carry out, like everyone else was doing.
Adapted.
Got creative on that. That went well for them. And so they've gotten really creative. They do a tasting menu, like 6 courses. It's very unique
I saw them
stuff.
post the other day. They had X number or X items in there with which to cook with, and they made pretty much everything that they could make with those items.
Right. Yeah.
So it was. Everybody's had to adapt.
It's
cool to see the way people are getting creative with what they have. To make this work?
Yeah, well, I mean, restaurants. I mean, I feel. I mean, obviously, we felt the impact of it last year. We were closed for 5 weeks, and it was slow leading up to that, and it was slow right after that. But restaurants, when they opened up, it was max of 50% capacity. And I asked Cody one time. I said, "Well, how's business?" He said, "Well, it's going fine, but it's only half of what we were doing."
Yeah.
So that's been very challenging for them. And
where is it?
It's at the corner of Manship and Jefferson in Bellhaven.
Okay.
809 Jefferson Street, I think.
I'll have to go try it.
It's really good. I encourage you to. It's right down the street. I mean, there's right down the street from Manship, Alex Eaton's restaurant there, and just a stone's throw from Lou's Full Serve with Louis LaRose. So it's a good spot for restaurants right now.
Nice.
But Cody started that whole photo concept with us here, and then when he left to go do the restaurant, then my youngest son Travis took over as marketing director, and he's kind of followed in Cody's footsteps there and added his own little touch to it. And so it's kind of different. We primarily use our photography as opposed to some canned shot from
stock photography
from the brand. Yeah. And that's been fun. We've gotten a good reaction to it.
Yeah. What would you say that your culture is within your organization, and how did you build it?
Well, I think it's a culture where in terms of leadership, we try to be very open, and we try to communicate with our staff and our employees. We let them know up front in the interview process what we're trying to accomplish and what we expect out of them, and we try to reinforce that. We try to give them the tools that they need to be able to carry that out. And basically, our culture is that, just kind of going back to the mission statement, is I wanted to carry quality products at a fair price and knock people down with service. Customer service is what we've always hung our hat on.
I think that from what I can remember, a big part of that customer service is continuing education. This was a really fun place to work, but it was a job too. It was, and you provided us with, assets like, the company reps coming in to do training and stuff like that. When did that start, or do you still do that?
Well, we haven't been able to do it obviously in the last year because the reps aren't really traveling and they're not doing clinics. But we started that pretty quickly, with several of our key reps, and
how to fit a backpack, how to fit somebody for boots. How far are you hiking the whole AT, or what is it, Pacific Crest Trail?
Pacific Crest Trail, Continental Divide.
You remember
Trail.
Bo?
Bo Tate.
Bo Tate, yeah. So, if you're going to go off something like that, you have to have specific gear.
Right.
And you actually provided us with the knowledge to equip these people to make, those journeys.
Yeah. I mean, and that was my idea from the beginning was, if whatever it is that you're doing, you want to do it well.
Right.
If you're selling something, whether it's mattresses or backpacks or whatever it is, you need to know about that product.
Right.
You need to know how it works. You need to know, in terms of backpacks, you need to know how a particular pack is sized, how it fits, what it's really designed for, how much weight can it carry. It's not about height; it's about torso length, and so you have to be able to measure for that torso length and know what size pack to put people in, and having the expertise to do that, and having staff that are comfortable in doing that. And that's always been my feeling, is that the more a staff member knows, the more comfortable they are in working with customers.
Yep.
Because my philosophy in retail is we need to ask a lot of questions. Somebody comes in and they've got a trip coming up, I want to ask them questions. Where are you going? What are you going to be doing? How long are you going to be out? What's the weather going to be like? What are your needs?
Yep.
And we want it to be, and this is what I've always tried to stress to our employees, we want it to be first an educational process when they come in here. We don't work on commission. We don't do a hard sale. We don't really try to push people into product. We want to educate the customer.
Mm-hmm.
And I've always felt like if we did a good job of that, we'd get our share of the sales.
Mm.
And online sales obviously have cut into our business, more so every year.
And we've talked about that, over the past 10 years, we've had some connection and stuff. And I remember asking, what, if you had ever planned on doing that. Obviously you did not.
We will be this year.
You will be.
Yeah.
So tell me, when did that come about?
So how did that come about? So it really more so than I think trying to be competitive in the marketplace is it's offering a service to our customer.
Mm-hmm.
And that really has come out in the last year with COVID shutting everything down and people being quarantined at home and not being able to get out or not feeling comfortable going to a retail store to shop. We've realized that it is as much a service and a convenience to our customer as it is anything else. When the internet first came along, in my opinion, it was all price driven. People went to the internet to find a better price on something. And then it's evolved, and that's still a part of it, but it's also about selection. You could go to Patagonia's website, and they'll have literally everything that they make on their website. I can't carry everything that Patagonia does. It's a huge brand. So there's that's a factor, people wanting to look at everything, or a lot of people start their research on the brand's website. I don't know which jacket I want, or I want to go on there and do some research and look, and then if I find what I like, then maybe I'll buy it locally. And during the last year, the people in our area here have been really supportive. The message has really been pushed out there. Support your local businesses; they really need it.
So I remember you telling me you had a industry peer in Nashville or somewhere in Tennessee that had found success with this stuff online.
Yeah.
So is that did you speak with him? Is that or what pushed you? Was it COVID?
Well, COVID was definitely I think a big thing that pushed us in that direction. Yeah, I had a friend of mine who's sold the business and retired now and just goes out and plays all the time. I envy him a little bit, but they were very successful online. They got in it from day one. Back when before brands became retailers, which they are now. Every brand out there is now a retailer as well. He had like the Chaco buy button. So if you went to Chaco's website to research what sandal you wanted and you wanted to buy one, you clicked on that button, you clicked on his website.
Nice.
That made online sales pretty easy, didn't it? Yeah. Anyway, they were very good at it, and they went way beyond that, and they were, they won online retailer of the year in the outdoor industry several times, and he was a very, very smart guy. I learned a lot about what it takes to run a site like that, and at that time it was super expensive, and you had to have a webmaster, and you had to have somebody that spoke that language and knew that world.
And that could be just as much a part of this place here.
Sure, yeah, because they had to know your culture.
Right.
The thing that I looked at when online sales first started in the web was, I'm like, well, I don't want to do that because that's cold and impersonal. That's not who we are. That's not what we're about. I can't give the customer that experience unless they're here and I'm talking to them and I'm asking those questions. And so that was something that really kept us from doing it in the early days. I said, I can't offer the same experience. But he taught me a lot about what it took to be good at that. But it was, it got really, really expensive for a number of years there, and we felt like, maybe that's not the thing for us to do. Now, though, having gone through basically a year of COVID and seeing how convenience is a big reason that people shop online, and they had to when we were all quarantined and they couldn't get out or didn't want to get out. Online sales were all you could do. And so that's something that we're going to integrate now. We got a little bit of a taste of it. There's a company based out of New Orleans called Locally.com. A friend of mine owns it. And what they do is they work with brands and retailers. Brands generate all the content, but we as retailers can put our inventory in a particular brand if they participate with Locally.
Like North Face, Patagonia.
Patagonia, for instance, works with Locally. So I can put my entire Patagonia inventory on Locally.com. And so if someone goes to Patagonia's website and they're researching a jacket, it takes you to Locally.com, and it will show you everyone in the Jackson area that is participating with Locally.com. And so you can click on Buffalo Peak Outfitters, and it will show you our entire inventory for Patagonia. You can then purchase it online, or do a hold and pick up in store. There's several different options there. And so we saw mainly in the fourth quarter last year how strong that could be. And it was really strong. I mean, we were getting 5, 6, 7 hits a day on that.
Yeah.
And so we realized then, okay, there's some merit to this from a convenience standpoint.
Now that they have it integrated like that, it just seems like a no-brainer.
Yeah. And so what we're going to continue with that, obviously, but I think we're probably going to add maybe Shopify or somebody like that. We've got a lot of our friends that use Shopify, and there's some tools there now that it's a lot less expensive, and it's a lot easier to do now than it used to be. And so
Shopify does make it extremely easy.
Yeah.
I've worked with that as an e-commerce platform before.
Yeah, it's really easy to take your point of sale system and integrate everything into their platform. So my anticipation is by early summer we should be fully online. In addition to doing still continuing to do the Locally.com.
Yeah. So what does your typical day consist of? when you get up and when you to the time you leave here, what are you doing during the day?
Travis, I do a little bit of everything, and it's one of the things that I enjoy about this job. I mean, there probably are a lot of business owners that sit in their office all day and just do whatever they do. But when I first started this business when I was 28 years old, I ordered the product. I checked the product in when it came in on the UPS truck. I priced it. I put it out on the floor. I merchandised the store. I waited on the customers. I did the deposits at night. I did everything. So there's nothing in this store that I haven't done or wouldn't do.
Yeah.
And so my day, one day, our shipping and receiving clerk was off today, so I helped Dave Edmondson, who's my general manager. He and I went back there and checked everything in. Got it priced, got it put out, did some office work, took care of a couple of special orders. I didn't actually work out on the floor very much today, but most days I'm out here, for several hours a day. So I'm wearing a lot of different hats. Like I said, I enjoy that. I don't know that I would enjoy a job where I just came in and just did the same thing all day, every day.
Yeah.
And owning a retail business means that you're dealing with customers, you're dealing with inventory, you're dealing with insurance, you're dealing with marketing, you're dealing with employees, and if you've got staff issues, hiring. There's just so much stuff that has to be done, and there's, most people walk into a shop like this and they look at it and they store looks great. We love coming in here shopping, and we hear that a lot. But unless you've worked retail before, like you have no idea what goes on behind the scenes to create all of this. And that's what we do here every day.
Yeah.
So my days are there are some days, like if I've just been back from market, I may be sitting at my desk trying to, make sure I get orders done before the deadline. But it's a lot of different hats, and that's fun.
So over the years and as a business owner, how do you define success for yourself and your business? Like what does success mean?
Well, in the early years, it was just paying your bills.
Yeah.
The early years were, as I think probably with most businesses, they were, it was pretty tough. So in the beginning, it was just making sure you got your bills paid every month. And then after we spent a few years in business and got a little bit more established, then it was actually showing a profit. Hey, we're actually doing something right. We're actually making money.
Yeah.
I didn't take a penny out of the business for the first 3 years that we were open. It took me 7 years before I was the highest paid employee. So, those are sacrifices that as a business owner, sometimes you have to do. So we started making a little bit of money. We grew the business. Again, we started out with 1,500 square feet, which is tiny, especially in today's retail world. We opened in 86. We expanded in 90. We expanded in 94. We expanded in 2010. So then success from a business standpoint kind of became growing the business.
Yeah.
We opened a store in Oxford in 2004. So success then was pretty much sales and business driven. Now, for me, having been in business for 35 years and having been decently successful at it and had some good sales years and some bad sales years. Business is sometimes up and down and a little bit of a roller coaster ride. But now, to me, being successful is more about customer satisfaction. And it's about hearing customers who came in and we asked those questions and we had those conversations and we found out where they're going and what they're doing and they bought gear from us. And then they come back and then we ask them about the trip and we go, hey, how did this work? How did that work? Oh, it worked great. The pack fit great. The boots were wonderful. Loved it. To me, that is sort of how I measure success now. I mean, obviously I have to keep my eye on the financial side of it. I think we've gotten better at the financial side of it and running a more streamlined and efficient business. So now the success is really a lot about how customers feel about us and the job that we're doing, and that gives me a feeling of satisfaction and makes me feel like we're successful in that we're doing what our goals are, which is educating customers and meeting their needs. Yep. And if we're doing that, we've got happy customers. They come back. That's what makes us successful.
Well, there's nothing better than an attaboy.
Yeah, exactly.
All right, so I'd like to get into the risk. Once you have this success and you have the financial stability, at what point do you go into, branching out and expanding, and I guess let's get into what's going to be your favorite failure for my show, Oxford, Mississippi.
So I think it's a bit intoxicating when you have success, and there were a few years where we had some really, really good success. I mean, our sales were growing every year. A lot of my friends had more than one store. Mm. I had friends in this industry that had 6, 8, 10 stores. And I never envisioned that being the case for us. But obviously the Oxford and Starkville markets were very appealing, looking at it from the outside, because such a huge part of our customer base were college kids. And they were really dialed into a lot of the brands that we were doing at the time. And so we started taking a really hard look at Oxford. And we opened a shop there in 2004. There wasn't much competition up there at that time, so we felt like we could go up there and do well. So we put in a smaller version of this. We started out with the same home runs that we had here, thinking that market would be pretty much the same. But it was a different market in some ways. And so we rolled along there for a little while, and this is when North Face was huge. I think probably about 50% of our sales up there was North Face at the time. Yeah. And it's funny how those trends can change from a category or from a brand, that everybody's owned it for a while, and then for whatever reason they're not.
Yep.
And sometimes the success of a brand is what actually kills it.
How so?
Well, I think that I've heard people say that here in the South that everybody wants to be different as long as they look like all their friends, and when the North Face was huge, I mean, when we did our North Face staff clinics, I if you remember those, I probably came out in like on a Denali jacket. I said, okay, all you need to know is logo placement. That's all you need to know.
I remember North Face jackets and the North Face backpacks.
Yeah.
As far as fads go, or those times and the things that everybody had.
Everybody had. Yeah. I mean, and you really didn't have to work very hard to sell those.
No.
You just had to have a good size selection, a good color selection, and have the inventory. And so initially it was kind of easy when we went into Oxford with brands like that being so hot. And but what I meant by that statement was that as brands like that continue to just grow and expand, at some point in time, those early adapters who maybe were the first ones to buy that North Face jacket look around them and they see, wow, everybody's wearing this. I'm not going to wear this anymore. What's the next brand that's coming along?
I see where you're going with that.
And so the very success of a brand at some point in time can start to kill the brand.
Its downfall.
Yeah. So, that I mean, we still do really well with the North Face. It's still a very important brand for us, but it's nothing like what it used to be. I mean, it was incredible. And that's what happened. That scenario happened. And my buddy up in Chattanooga that we were talking about earlier that did so well in online had a saying. He said, "Trends die with junior high girls." And so what he meant by that was college girls get onto it. The Denali jacket, every college girl had at least 4 colors. High school girls started wearing it. By the time it got to the junior high girls, the college girls weren't so keen on it anymore. And that's what I meant by that
makes sense.
Of the success of a product or a brand can actually start to cannibalize that brand. So anyway, Oxford started out really well. We were excited about it. I was a multi-location owner, that appealed to me, on some level. And it did well for a while, but then it was a timing issue, and online sales started to pick up a lot.
Mm-hmm.
College kids especially just started to buy a lot of product online, and that cut into our sales up there. We had a competitor that came in from out of town that did all the same brands that we did. It didn't help that they kind of had a fire sale the first 6 months they were in business there, and that didn't help. They were basically just stealing customers. But anyway, our business up there started to decline. But it was more than just that. There were multiple factors that brought me to the point where I closed that store. I was open for 9 years up there. I had 5 different managers. The last one I had was really good, but that was when sales had started to go down.
Yeah.
It was a 2.5-hour drive from here to Oxford, one way. So that was 5 hours if you went up and back. So 5 hours of drive time if you went up and back in a day means you got to spend maybe 4 hours in the store. That was not enough time to learn what do we need to be doing in this market, because we found it was different. Things that we did really well with here in Jackson did not necessarily do well in Oxford, and vice versa. So it made it more difficult to really have my finger on the pulse of what was going on up there. And part of the problem was, management and not having someone who understood what I needed out of them. I didn't need someone who just open the store every morning and close it every night and, manage the staff. I needed people giving me feedback. I needed to know, okay, what are the kids wearing? So many of the trends that we spot here that we get onto, it's because we look at what everybody wears when they come in here.
Yeah.
And if they're wearing something different from what we're carrying, we notice that.
Yeah.
And when we're out and about in the community, we look at what kids are wearing. That's what I needed from those guys up there that I just never really got. And part of that is the fact that, right here, my office is across the hall, and I can walk over here anytime I want. And, that was 2.5 hours away.
Yeah.
And so multiple managers and kind of more of a part-time college student staff that was rotating through there, and it was just kind of what they did in the afternoons. And
nobody really interested in investing in your growth of your business.
No. They were getting their 20 hours in, and and that was pretty much it. And the store managers were, it was sort of I guess just a stepping stone in what they wanted to do long term. And I wasn't an absentee owner. I was up there a lot, but I was having to spend a lot of time up there. I was having to send, my management staff members here would go up there from time to time, and we were spending a lot of time managing that store remotely.
Yeah.
And that was, I think that was part of the reason that I got to a point sales wise where I said, okay, we're not losing money up here, but our sales are starting to have declined over a number of years.
There's red flags.
From a sales standpoint, but then there are all these there are management issues and feedback issues and just things that I can't walk across the hall and and do what I need to do. If a customer's got an issue over here or needs help or whatever, I'm here.
Yep.
Couldn't do that up there. So it just got to a point where I said, I would rather close this store and just focus on the one store here.
Yep.
And that has worked. This store is more successful because all of, my focus, and Dave Edmondson, who's my general manager, all of his focus,
Yep.
and Travis, who's the floor manager, all of our focus is on this shop.
Mm-hmm.
We don't have another location. This is all we have to work on.
So with Oxford, the Oxford branch being, your favorite failure, the purpose of what I'm trying to do here with this podcast is basically I want to hear stories of success and lessons learned.
Mm-hmm.
Failures that ultimately led to growth. What would you say helped you personally grow the most, or what have you learned that you've implemented here based on that failure?
Well, I think from the Oxford situation, I learned the importance of that hands-on, day-to-day contact with customers and staff members.
Mm.
I didn't have that in Oxford because I was down here. So I learned from that situation that even though you have meetings with managers and staff members and you try to convey what you're trying to accomplish, I've always been the kind of guy who's a lead from the front guy. There's this number of books called The Rogue Warrior, and it was written by a guy named Dick Marchenko, who was one of the original members of SEAL Team 6, and I think he probably got in trouble for writing some of these books because they were very there was a lot of information in there. But he talks about starting and building and running SEAL Team 6, and you can imagine the coordination and the training and everything that has to go into something like that. But his big deal always was lead from the front, and I've always tried to do that here. And here I can do that because I'm here every day. Mm-hmm. Up there, I couldn't really do that. I could go up and work for a day or two, but I wasn't always there, hands-on, showing them what to do and seeing what was going on up there.
Yeah.
So what I learned from that was that you really need that close personal interaction with staff and with your customer base.
And that's, another thing that I'd like to get into is It seems like that's a good trait to have, to lead from the front. You know,
Mm-hmm.
have you noticed anything that you have in common with your peers, or your industry colleagues and stuff? Any personal traits that you believe a business owner has to have that's more likely to lead to a successful business?
Well, I mean, obviously, the first thing is your work ethic. You know, I mean, you need to be willing to work hard. You need to be willing to put in long hours. Retail's, you know, the only person I've ever known that loved retail hours was Dave, and that's because he was a swim coach, and he was at the pool at 5 a.m. and he got home at 9 p.m.
Yep.
He's the only one who I know who loves retail hours. They're long, they're hard. You've got to work hard at it to be good at it, and that's the case with anything. You know, there are very few businesses that people just open the doors and they're just inundated with tons of business. And it happens every now and then, but not that often. You've got to work at it, and you've got to learn, and you know, you've got to learn from your mistakes, and you've got to be creative, and you've got to think outside the box, and you've got to be willing to say, well, this is the way I thought it was going to be, but now I've learned that that's not the way it is, and I need to change that.
Admit you're wrong.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Because I've made tons of mistakes in this business over 35 years. And I try to learn from all of them, you know, and some of that's as simple as buying a brand or buying a particular item that I thought was going to sell but didn't. And that's, you know, it's one of the old adages of retail is I don't have to like it to sell it.
Right.
You know, and just because I like it doesn't mean it's going to sell. But, you know, we've gotten into categories that I thought was going to work and it just didn't. And you have to be willing to say, okay, I was wrong. That didn't work. Get out of it, move on, do something else.
Yeah.
So, yeah, you know, you have to be willing to look outside the box, and you have to be willing to look at what other people are doing, but kind of bring that to your market area. I mean, I you know, like I said, I talked to Dawson up at Rock Creek in Chattanooga a lot, and I still have a group of friends of mine in the Southeast that own shops like this, and I talk to them all the time.
Did you have a mentor, you know, throughout all that in your beginning and stuff? Could you label one person as probably the most important influence you've had?
Yeah, I'll probably list two maybe. Larry Glass, who owned the chain of the Athlete's Foot stores that I worked for, taught me most of what I know about retail. He taught me everything about customer service and how to treat customers. He taught me how to buy. And so I learned a tremendous amount about, I think, really learning about how to put myself in the customer's shoes, no pun intended there, but just to look at things through the customer's eyes.
Yeah.
And that's obviously what we try to do here today is, and I think that something that I've been blessed with is just to be able to see through the customer's lens of how things are set up and how things are done and how what we do affects them. And Larry Glass taught me a lot of that. When I got into the outdoor industry, there was a guy named Dave Baker who owned the Summit Hut in Tucson, Arizona. Dave started his own business at the age of 16. He and a buddy selling climbing equipment out of his garage to his friends. And that grew into Summit Hut, which has been in business now for 40, 50 years, I guess. Dave has since sold it to his general manager, and she and her husband run it now. So there's that continuation, you know. But Dave would always, whenever he'd see me at market, he would just pull me aside. And we don't really talk about product or anything like that. He's just like, how are you doing?
Yeah.
Is everything going okay? You know, you hanging in there? It wasn't so much, I guess, a mentor from well, you should be buying this brand or whatever. It was just he was an encourager.
Yeah.
You know, he was someone who
He was inspiring.
He cared.
Yeah.
You know, he's like, hey, you know, how's everything going? Because he knew what the challenges were of starting, you know, a business like that. And he
knew that you needed to be asked that question.
Exactly.
How's Bob?
Yeah. Exactly. And he did take it, you know, it was more than just how's the business doing. It was always, how are you doing running the business? Because he'd been through all that. You know, when you start a business at 16 and, you know, you make a lot of mistakes and you learn a lot of things. And so he was always a big encourager. Of course, my parents, taught me a lot. I grew up on a farm. My dad was a farmer, so the work ethic was definitely there.
Yeah.
He taught me that we were going to work hard, and my mom was just the sweetest mom in the world, and she taught me how to treat people. I think a lot of what I know about again trying to put myself in the customer's position came from her. I was fortunate enough, as you were, to play sports in high school and in college, and I had a high school basketball coach in Ronnie Aldi who pushed us very hard. Charlie Rugg was my college coach at Belhaven. Both of those guys pushed me as an individual to get the most out of me. And I think if you've never played sports, it's hard to understand the relationship between athletes and coaches.
Yeah.
You understand this about how that coach his goal is to get the best out of you that he can as an individual, and that is going to help the team achieve their goals. And that's what it all is. It's about improving your individual skills so that the team can be successful.
And knowing how to manage each individual player.
Right.
But one of my favorite sayings of all time is you're not going to coach Michael Jordan the same way you coach Scottie Pippen.
Exactly.
And so actually identifying how a player responds, or versus other players.
Right. And it's the same thing with staff.
Yep.
When you're putting a staff together, each staff person is motivated differently. For some people it may be, hey, you're doing a great job, we're going to give you $1 an hour raise.
Yep.
With some people it's simply, hey, great job, thank you for doing that.
Mm-hmm.
Everybody needs to hear that.
Yep.
But it's motivation comes in different forms for everybody. The coaches that are really successful don't just have one method of motivating.
Right.
It's not just, kick your tail and push you hard. It's having those conversations about what's going to bring the best out of you.
Yeah.
Because if he's doing that well or she's doing that well with each of their players, then their team is obviously going to be better.
Yep.
When you've got a group of individuals that are performing at their highest level, then the team is going to perform at its highest level. And that's what the good coaches really do. And so I had two really good ones that were very
and the good bosses.
Yeah, and they were very successful. And the whole point of that is that Coach Rugg has been put into the the Mississippi Athletic Hall of Fame and the Belhaven Hall of Fame, and was very successful. And he was very good at getting a lot out of his teams and maybe overperforming in a lot of situations. And so, but the cool thing about it is we raised a bunch of money and put a new floor in the gym at Belhaven a few years back, and they named it after Coach Rugg. Well, we had a big banquet, and there were about 75 to 100 players that came back for that he had coached over the years. And he started coaching at Belhaven in 63 or 5 or something like that, been there for a long time. And it was interesting to hear their perspective. And this is everybody from John Brady, who took LSU to a Final Four, down to, people like me who never went on to have any athletic career after that other than being church league basketball heroes. But all of them said, I learned so much, from Coach Rugg, and that helped me to be successful as a fill in the blank, whatever they were. And, it was interesting because Coach Rugg then, when he got up, said, I pushed you guys hard. I know I did that. I hope I didn't step over, any lines. And we had great success, while you were here on the floor. But he said, I'm more proud of what you've become as men. He said, I look out around this room and I see doctors and lawyers and business owners and accountants and, people that are successful in their field. Yeah. And every one of those guys would tell you that they were successful because of the work ethic that was instilled in them. And a lot of them, I'm sure they had parents that helped out and high school coaches, but, Coach Rugg kind of put that finishing touch on it and pushed us harder probably than a lot of other people did. But it taught us how to be successful, and it taught us how to use individual skills that we learned and honed and how to use those to lead a team,
right,
and be successful, because that's what, I mean, unless you're a one-man wrecking crew in your business, I mean, we've all got teams that work for us and with us. And one of the keys to really being successful is how to lead that team. And again, my philosophy is lead from the front, and how to work with that team and work alongside them and try to give them as much knowledge as you can so that they can do their job better.
Right.
And, coaches, a lot of the successful coaches have great talent, individual talent, but they have to make sure that talent plays well together. I mean, look at Kentucky. Kentucky's 8-14 this year. I keep bringing it back to basketball. You would take it to baseball, but Kentucky brings in generally a new crop of outstanding talent every year. And there have obviously been a ton of challenges this year, but they're 8-14, I think, the last time I looked. Still have great individual talent, but for this year, for whatever reason, it didn't gel.
There's no cohesion.
And they didn't play well as a team. Now, when they do play well as a team, they're as good as anybody in the country.
Yep.
But if that talent doesn't gel and Calipari's not able to bring those kids together as a team, this year they're not successful.
Yeah.
It's the same thing in a retail business or any other business. You've got a team that works for you and with you, and you have to be able to coach those kids up individually, but you also need to make sure that everybody works well together.
Right.
I've had salespeople that were great salespeople. I mean, they were really, really good, but they didn't necessarily fit in with the rest of the group here.
Yeah. And that was an important part of it.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean,
I remember, the dynamic here was always close knit.
Yeah.
We would go, and especially during Christmas, because Christmas around here gets nuts.
Yeah, it does.
And us being friends outside of work,
right.
and that bonding that we had, transferred to here. These were long days, and it was hard work. We weren't sitting down at all,
no.
or during Christmas and stuff. It was constant running, and having that camaraderie between employees. Is easier to happen when you see a boss working alongside of you.
Right.
So it's not like like you said earlier, you weren't just stuck in the office. You weren't just. We saw you, and we saw how invested you were in the success of this business, and how much you loved it, and how much you loved your customers, and employees feed off that.
Yeah. Yeah. I totally agree with you, and there are days where I have to spend the majority of my time in the office, but I believe any business owner needs to be working with his employees, and because he needs to know what they're dealing with on a daily basis. Right. Is there something that's preventing them from maybe doing their job better? And it could be little things sometimes, that make a difference. And you want to be a part of the team, but as a business owner, you still have, the buck stops with me.
Yeah.
And so there's sort of this, and it's probably different in every business, but I definitely want to be involved with my staff, and I want them to feel comfortable, coming and talking to me about anything and having that interaction. But there still needs to be a little bit of separation there.
Right.
You have to still be able to tell them if they're doing something wrong.
Yeah.
But constructive criticism, and hey, I think you might do this better if you did it this way.
Constructive criticism while it's warranted.
Exactly. Yeah.
Until it gets to a point, there's,
right.
I feel.
Yeah. I mean, you have to learn how to manage people and their personalities. And for a lot of businesses, that's the hardest thing that we do is managing personalities, and knowing what makes each individual tick and what motivates them, and trying to make sure that you're providing that for them, so that they're happy and so that they do their job better, and overall you're going to have a more successful business because of that.
What would you say your most satisfying moment as a business owner has been?
Well, obviously, having some success as a business is a lot of fun, and I'd say it's a couple of things. Starting something from scratch, from concept to 35 years later, has obviously been very rewarding. There have been ups and downs. There's certainly been challenges we've had good years and bad years, but having a vision for something and starting it from scratch and then seeing it be successful has been very rewarding. The other thing for me personally is being able to work with both my boys. Cody was here for a number of years, started out working part-time in the warehouse in the summers, quickly realized that that's not what he wanted to do. But he did some buying and he did all the marketing and he worked on the floor for us. And, Travis is our floor manager now. So that has been personally very rewarding, just to build a business, to see it grow, and then to be able to work alongside my two boys, and have something that they felt good enough about that they wanted to work here. That's been very, very rewarding.
I bet. So what advice would you give anybody wanting to start a business?
Do your homework first. Learn as much as you can about whatever the business that you're interested in. Really get dialed in on it, get focused on it. Back in the day, I think it was easier to start a business because there weren't 10 other businesses in town that were like you. When I started, there was really nobody else like me.
Yeah.
You need to do some market research. You need to know what you're going to do and what you're going to be.
And who your competitors are.
And who your competitors are. Exactly. Yeah. And so, do your homework, know what everyone else is doing, in terms of your competitors, but that's not enough. You have to know what you're going to do that's going to be different. Because if you're just going to be like everyone else and you're just going to do what they're doing, then you're only going to get a slice of the pie.
Yeah.
You've got to have a plan for, I'm going to do this better. Therefore, you're going to rise above your competition, and you're going to be more successful.
Yeah.
Otherwise, you're just going to be, fighting for the scraps at the table. I think being really focused on what you're going to do and knowing how you're going to differentiate yourself from everybody else that's doing it is really key.
That's really good stuff, Mr. Bob. I appreciate you hosting me here. And letting me come set up and have this conversation with you. I learned a lot, and hopefully, anybody that tunes into this, is going to learn a lot from your insight and your expertise for doing this for 35 years. Congrats on 35 years.
No, thank you. Thank you. I think this is something that it'd be great for every business owner to do, because what this has done, and I didn't really think about this on the front end of it, but what this has done is it's made me take a look at my business.
Yeah.
And it's made me revisit that mission statement and, what we were doing when we first started. And it made me take a look at it and go, okay, are we still doing this?
Yeah.
This is what we wanted to do. This is who we wanted to be. Are we still doing that? So I think it'd be great for every business owner to just sit down and have this conversation, just to revisit things and so often we get caught up in just the daily grind of what we've got to get done. And oftentimes we need to just step back and, put all that aside and just take a look, overall, what are we doing? Or have we accomplished what we're setting out to do? Do we need to change that mission statement? Does that need to change? Do we need to take core parts of that, but now put it into 2021 and make changes to it? And it's just business owners need to look at what they're doing.
Yeah.
If you just kind of stick your head in the sand and keep doing the same thing year after year after year, number one, that's not real fun. And number two, things are probably passing you by while you got your head in the sand. So to do something like this and the questions that you've asked have made me think about the way we do things and what our goals are and what the culture is. And everybody needs to have a culture, and they need to know what that is, and they need to be happy with it.
Yeah.
And going through a process like this, it's going to let you know whether you feel good about it or not.
Yeah, well, that's good to hear. I'm glad that, I was able to be a part of that process.
Absolutely.
Right now.
Yeah, because I'm one of those guys. I'm busy all the time, and but this this made me stop and look back at how we started, and and I think that's important too for business owners, is always know where you came from.
Yeah.
I mean, we've been successful. We've had good years, we had bad years, we've had great years, but I've never forgotten, where we started, 1,500 square feet, just hoping to get the bills paid.
Yeah.
And so I think that makes you a little more humble, just as a person, and helps you to be thankful for. I'm very thankful for what I've got. We've been very fortunate, to be in a market area here in Jackson and Madison, Ridgeland, Flowood that has supported us. Really, the whole state. I mean, we get people in here from all over the state, and we get people in here that have traveled all over the world, and we're very fortunate that those people like what we do, they like the products that we carry, and they have supported us. And without that, we wouldn't be around.
Right. So don't forget where you came from, and know that failure is going to happen in business and life. And the point of this whole podcast, My Favorite Failure, is you're going to fail. Are you going to grow from it?
Right.
So,
yeah, I mean, it's not about, it's not about falling down. We're all going to fall down.
Right.
It's how we get up and move on from that point. It's not about our circumstances. It's how we deal with them.
Right.
And if you grow each time that happens, and if you're pushing it, if you're trying to grow, you're going to make mistakes. That's just a part of it. Don't be afraid to do that.
Yep.
Move on, learn from it, and you'll be a better business person for it.
So thank you for opening up and telling me and sharing your favorite failure with me, and best of luck in the future, Mr.
Thank you, Travis. Appreciate it.